Anyone who believes the Matrix doesn't exist just simply hasn't got high enough yet. I often compare it to, no, but it's like a fishbowl, right? You have people living inside of the fish tank and they're swimming around talking about how free they are. And they say, oh, I can see in all directions and I don't see any walls and I'm free. And I'm sure that's true unless you try and swim too far, and then you're going to start bouncing up against glass walls and you're going to realize that there are control mechanisms that are designed to prevent people from learning too much or saying too much or having too much unless you are controlled to some degree. And I guess that's a simple way of explaining it, the Matrix as a whole. I actually was having this conversation with Tristan the other day that I feel like this whole generation of people becoming famous on their own merit and on their own back. I say generation, it's probably only about 6-7 years old that a podcaster or somebody can come along and garner international attention without needing a gatekeeper as such. I know you're still on YouTube, but YouTube to a degree is still a gatekeeper. You said about David's been banned. I've been banned. I hope you survive for as long as possible, my friend.
I was banned twice after covering that story.
Well, there you go. So if you work in traditional entertainment industries, there's a gatekeeper. There's a manager or a producer or a director or a record label or a sports team, whatever. There's somebody who you've signed that contract with who will prevent you from doing things or saying things they don't want you to say. Otherwise, it's all over. There's a gatekeeper. And now we've entered a generation, or we've entered a time where people can come along, become famous on their own back, of their own merit, especially with Rumble and X, these other platforms. You can avoid gatekeepers. And that is very aggravating to the people who only want certain ideas purported. So their answer to that is lawfare. Their answer to that is the legal system. You say, okay, well, this person's talking too much and there's no manager we can call to make sure he shuts up. Let's try and bribe him with some money. Let's try and get him a sponsorship contract. Let's get him under someone's heel. If the person declines such a sponsorship contract, then the answer after that is to try and shut you up, ban you everywhere. And if that fails, the only move they have left is to put you in jail. And what they'll do is they'll go to the legal system, they'll assign a prosecutor, and they'll say, do whatever it takes to ruin this person's life. And he'll do his very best. And that's why I talk about the fish tank, because people are swimming around inside of the water and they believe the legal system is fair, and they believe that everything you're told in the news is true, and that there's no reason for the Matrix to exist. Why would it exist? Why would there be this big collusion to try and prevent certain ideas being released to the public? I've never experienced any of these things. Well, that's because you're being a good little fish. You're inside of the bowl. If you try and go too far, you'll start bumping up against the glass wall, and the glass wall can be your social media accounts, it can be your bank accounts, it can be your freedom to live and breathe, because they will throw you in a cell. And I guess, perhaps I don't want to be too forgiving. I'm often called too nice. I don't even know this. I'm called too nice far too often. But I sit and I analyze, and you have to understand that although they're destroying my life, I don't take it so personally, because I very much understand why they're doing it. And I understand the enemy I have chosen. I feel like the best thing I can be in this situation is to not be emotional about what's happening to me. Because if I'm emotional, I don't think it allows me to think rationally. And I look at it very simply, and I ask the people at home who don't believe in the Matrix, think of it this simply. If you owned a company and you had members of staff, and you wanted your members of staff to act in a certain way, and you had a couple members of staff who continually defied your orders and wouldn't do as you told them or asked them to do, even though what you need them to do is to the best interests of the company as a whole. They're coming along and acting different than you want them to act, and it's damaging your bottom line. You would fire them. Well, you can think of the world as a company, and they have decided that certain ideas are good for them. I disagree. They've decided that certain moral standings and geopolitical decisions are good for them, and of course I disagree. And I'm the bad employee. And unfortunately for them, people are listening to me talk. So now I'm inspiring a little rebellion around the water cooler on the lunch break. And they've thought, well, we have to stop this. And they've come along and are using the tools they have at their disposal. And first they're going to slander you and cancel you everywhere and try their very best to convince the world you're a bad person. And if that fails, they will throw you in jail. And I understand why they're doing what they're doing. I'm not personally offended, if that makes sense. I understand the battle I'm in. Maybe I should be offended. Maybe I should wake up and say they've taken all my money and they're taking me away from my children, they're wasting my life. Maybe I should care. But when they come to arrest me, I'm very much like, well, this is the game we play. It's like losing a character, and it's like losing a little piece in checkers. You took my piece. Like that's the game. And perhaps I'm too rational about it. But anybody at home who doesn't understand that it's really that simple. that if you owned a company, you wouldn't allow bad employees to inspire a rebellion against the company. And the governments don't allow individuals to speak too much truth about how evil these governments are. Now, the problem with all of this is that I'm on the right side of history and I'm right and they're wrong and they're genuinely evil. That's the problem with all of it. The problem with all of it is I'm actually the good guy. But they don't see it that way. They see themselves as the good guy. I am the bad guy because I will not wear a dress. And therefore, I must pay the price.